Dear students, welcome back to the very last video of today's class. And in fact, the last video of the training and developing employees chapter. So till now, we have learned a lot of techniques regarding types of training, and then we have learned the ADDIE model, right? So the model for designing and implementing trainings. Now in the very last stage, we are going to learn how to evaluate training outcomes. This is a very important step. Now, before I start, I would just like to tell you why do we need to evaluate trainings? Why is it so important? It is important because designing trainings and implementing trainings require a lot of money. It requires a lot of money, a lot of effort, and a lot of budget. So after doing all of these things, we must evaluate that whether our training was successful. Otherwise, all our spending or expenses will go right down the drain. Alright, so now that we know the purpose of evaluating trainings, let's go into the details. So in general, training evaluation consists of 4 steps. What are those steps? Here it goes. So in evaluating trainings, we measure these 4 things: reaction, learning, behavior, and result. Once again, reaction, learning, behavior, and result. Now I'm going to explain each of these concepts one by one. So let's move on. Number one thing that we need to measure is reaction. So what is this? Here, we evaluate trainees' reactions to the program. I guess it's going to be very easy to understand if you just take a look at this photo. So we need to measure whether you really liked the program. So was it really engaging, or did you just listen to the lecture and dozed off throughout the whole training program, just like Mr. Bean here? So as one of the training evaluation steps, we measure the reaction of the trainees. So in the reaction step, what do we ask to the trainees? We ask them, did they like the program? And also, did they think the program was worthwhile? So this is in summary the first step that we need to measure. Now, in order to measure reaction, what organizations usually do is that after the training program, they run a post-training survey. So as you can see here, there are a lot of questions in this survey. And the survey is rolled out to the trainees to collect feedback from them. Now, just to have an understanding, let's take a look at some of the questions very briefly. So we have the first question here, which is, how do you feel about the way the information was presented? Next question is, how was the length of each session? How was the length of the entire training series? The information presented was too technical, not technical enough, just the right mix. Then we have the instructor provided the information in an understanding and engaging manner. And we also have 2 further questions. So I guess now you have an idea what are the types of questions that we can have in a post-training survey. The main purpose of post-training survey is to measure the trainees' reaction and to collect feedback from them. Again, based on the collected feedback, maybe organizations would try to change the design of the program if needed in the future. So if the trainees say that the program was really good, in that case, the design will not be changed maybe. On the other hand, if the trainees say that yes, there is a specific problem with the training program, then the organizations would obviously want to address that problem and maybe redesign the training program for the future. Alright, so we are done with measuring reaction of the trainees here. Let's move on to the next stage, which is learning. So this is another outcome of the training program that we need to measure. So what do we do here? Here it goes. We test the trainees to determine whether they learned the principles, skills, and facts they were supposed to learn. So here we actually measure whether the trainees actually learned the skill they were supposed to learn. So maybe at the end of the training, we take a test of the trainees and try to find out whether they have learned anything throughout the training program. So just to give you an example, what do we measure in that test or the exam that is supposed to be given by the trainees? Let's assume we are thinking of the racer example again. So by taking the test, we want to find out whether the racer has learned all the skills related to driving. So yes, can the racer drive very well after the training? Or is it just that even after the training, the racer is facing accidents again? So maybe even after the training, the racer has not learned that much. So simply speaking, we are trying to measure whether the trainee has learned anything throughout the training program. Let me give you another example here. Say we are conducting a training on customer service. So we are conducting a session on how to provide superior customer service. Now after the training, we want to measure whether the trainees have learned the tactics of superior customer service, whether they know how to provide superior customer service now. So as you can see here, we want to find out whether after attending the training, the customer service executives have learned how to talk to the customers in a delightful manner, or is it that they haven't learned anything? They are still continuing to talk to the customers in a rude and disgruntled manner. So maybe for some reason, they still don't know and haven't learned how to talk properly to other people. Now, how can we measure this learning? Maybe we can take a test, or maybe we can give them a phone and then ask them to talk to a customer for 5 or 10 minutes. And that is how we can measure the learning of the trainees. Now let's move on to the next outcome that we can measure here. So the next outcome that we have to measure is behavior. Now, before I start explaining this topic, please note that there is a major difference between behavior and learning. So please listen to me very carefully for the next 2 to 3 minutes, and in that way you will be able to understand the difference between these two concepts very well. So what happens in behavior measurement? Here it goes. We ask whether the trainee's on-the-job behavior changed because of the training program. So again, here we want to measure whether after the training, the behavior of the trainees on the job has changed. Now let's say, for example, we want to measure the behavior change of the trainees after a training program. Now for example, let's say we are trying to find out, are employees in the store's complaint department more courteous and delightful toward disgruntled and unhappy customers? Now as you can see in this photo, we want to find out whether the trainee's behavior has changed on the job, whether they're talking politely to the customers, or is it just the same as before? So they're still rude. So here we are measuring the behavior change of the trainees on the job. Now let's move on to the very important point. Now many of you have noticed already that I have used the same photo in case of behavior change and in the learning outcome as well. So what is the difference between behavior change and learning though? Let me tell you the difference, and listen to me very carefully for the next minute. Number one, when learning did not take place. So in a training outcome, if learning did not take place or does not take place, what happens then? Here it goes. I do not know how to do it. So here, the customer service executive does not know exactly how to talk to customers in a polite manner. Why? Because he has not learned it, or he was not able to learn it. So again, here the customer service executive is talking in a very rude manner to the customers because he has not learned properly how to talk to customers in a polite manner. So simply speaking, he does not know how to talk to customers politely. Now, let's take a look at the next slide. What happens here? Now here, your learning took place, but your behavior did not change. So in this case, what happens here? Yes, I know how to do it, even then I will not do it. Now here, the customer service executive is again talking in a rude manner, but this time the reason is different. The reason is very different. Here the executive knows very well how to talk to a customer politely, but for some reason the executive is not willing to change his behavior. So he is intentionally talking in a rude manner to the customers. Maybe he is unhappy with his job. Maybe he has some personal problems. And that is why he is behaving in that manner. So again, here, even though the learning took place, the behavior change is not there. So in summary, the customer service executive is again behaving in a rude manner, but for a different reason. Because the customer service executive knows very well how to talk in a polite manner, but even then, he is not willing to change his behavior, or is not changing his behavior for some other reason. Now that is the difference between learning and behavior. In absence of learning, the trainees do not know how to do it, and in absence of behavior, even though the trainees know how to do it, they are not changing their behavior on the job. Alright, we are done with behavior change. Now let's move on to the last outcome for today, which is result. This one is very easy. So as the name suggests, in this stage, we ask what results did we achieve in terms of the training objectives previously set. So here we ask, did we achieve the result of the training? So simply speaking, we measure the result of the training. And at the same time, we also measure whether this training has led to better result for the organization. So for example, in the case of the training for a racer, whether the racer's driving skills have improved, and at the same time, we also want to find out whether our racers are winning races overall. So whether our racers are becoming first, second, or third. So whether their performance has improved overall. So again, we want to find out whether the purpose of the training or the intended result of the training has been achieved, and whether these racers are bringing in results for the company. Now, if the training program does not produce measurable performance, such as related results, then it probably has not achieved its goals. So if we do not get the intended result, in that case, we either need to drop the training, or we have to redesign the whole training, or we may have to address some other issues outside of the training. In summary, the measurement of result is very important, because this is why exactly we are providing trainings to our employees. So yes, finally we are done with measuring all the outcomes of training. So our training evaluation process is done. So congratulations, we are done with the whole chapter here. Thank you for listening to this lecture. I'm going to see you next week with a new chapter.